Welcome to the third video in a series in which I, a board game enthusiast, try to reduce my board game collection by half. I will explain my thinking as I decide what I'm going to keep and what's got to go, and it might help you think about what you like in a board game. But why am I doing this? Well, some of these board games are just not going to get played. But just because a game isn't going to get played, can't it still stay on the shelf? We all have books on our shelves and we don't expect to read all of them again. But on the other hand, books do sort of shape us in quite a profound way. Do board games do that? Before we look at some of the puzzle games today, I would like to show you 4 of my favorite puzzles. I worked as a maths teacher for 15 years, so yeah, check these out. Okay, so here's the first one. Can you remove just 4 matches and have just 4 triangles remaining? Now the triangles, they have to be the same shape and size. So the puzzle is, can you remove 4 matches and there'll be just 4 triangles remaining? And the second puzzle is, can you draw just 4 straight lines to go through all 9 of these dots, but you cannot take your pen off the page? That's the second puzzle. The third puzzle is, what is the next symbol in this sequence? So I know it doesn't really look like a sequence, but it is, and you have to tell me what is the next diagram that's going to appear in the sequence. And finally, I want you to look at this portrait and tell me, who is this person in relation to me, by answering this riddle. Brothers and sisters I have none, but that man's father is my father's son. Do you want to hear that again? Brothers and sisters I have none, but that man's father is my father's son. Okay, there are your 4 puzzles. The answers will be appearing throughout the video. And now let's look at today's games for consideration. Have you played these escape room games? They're really a blast. In order to be able to play a game of Unlock, you have to first download an app onto your phone. But the way the game uses this deck of cards along with the app brings in a lot of different possibilities and a lot of creativity there. Whereas with Exit, you have the game all in the box. And the thing about Exit is, as you go along, you destroy the game. So after you finish the game of Exit, you put the game in the bin. But that's because you get to tear things up and scribble on things. And that's where the creativity comes in when you're playing a game of Exit, on the other hand. Now, the thing about Exit is it's got a really good help system. So if you get stuck, it gets you out of trouble. Whereas I've had some games of Unlock that have been a bit frustrating, where I've got a bit confused and not known how to get out of it. But overall, I gotta say, I have played more games of Unlock. And why is that? It's because of the appeal of it just being a single deck of cards, and that's the game, and you just draw the top card and off you go. Whereas, and also the app makes it easier to play and makes it a smooth experience overall. Whereas with Exit, the game is a little bit more involved. There's a bit more to the setup. And as I tend to play these puzzle games with my wife, we've always gravitated towards Unlock just because it's just a bit quicker to get into. The 4 matches is actually not a trick question. It's just a really good puzzle. And you can see here that as I remove the 4 matches, it is possible to leave 4 triangles of the same shape and size with no loose matches hanging off the end. Another puzzle game I own is Micro Macro. This might look like a freeze frame of a big city, but all these characters and cars are all moving around. Here comes a couple down the street. There they are saying goodbye. He goes on, she goes that way. And the game gives you this deck of cards and you have to explore, where did they come from? Where did they go? And there's all sorts of shenanigans going on in this city. In fact, everyone is either a perpetrator of some heinous crime or else they're a victim of a crime. And speaking of heinous crimes, apparently in the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of management seminars using this 9 dots puzzle along with the expression, think outside the box. Apparently that's where that expression was popularized it's associated with this puzzle, going through all 9 dots by drawing just 4 straight lines without taking your pen off the page. With word games, I just find they create social anxiety, and the time when I would pull out a word game would be in a social situation. But imagine if you were invited to an event and the host said, "Oh, let's do our favorite thing," and everyone starts playing a geography quiz and naming like capital cities and stuff, and then after a while it would be like, "Oh, well done, everybody! Everyone, the scores were so close, and everyone got over 100, apart from, yeah, what's your name? Terry. Terry, who scored 27. Welcome, Terry." For me, the problem with Scrabble is that you can't really think much about your turn until it's your turn. We all know that experience of it comes round to you and then somebody has just gone where you were thinking about putting your word, which is quite a frustrating experience, really. Can you see what I'm saying? I'm really hesitant about having games on the shelf that are about scores and skills and then pulling them off the shelf in a social situation. I mean, show offs like me, I love that kind of thing, but some people are less confident spelling bees. Letter Jam is the only word game I own, and it's a cooperative word game. And it has this gentle way of trying to include everybody at the table and get everyone to contribute. The concept of Letter Jam is pretty simple. It's basically like 20 questions where I'm trying to get you, no, you are trying to get me to guess the letter that is in front of me. That does create a little bit of a challenge though, because in Letter Jam the letters are spread around the table and you can't physically move them around. You know the way in Scrabble you can physically move the tiles around on your little tray? Not so in Letter Jam, and one of the letters could be wild as well, and so you're trying to jiggle them around in your head. Actually, in Scrabble, of course, there's always that randomness of the tile draw, and as we know with games, if there's a bit of randomness, it makes everyone relax, yeah, because you can just say, "Relax, it's random." In Scrabble, you can always blame your bad luck on the tiles that you're drawing out of the tile bag each time. And it's the same with Wordle, I suppose. You can just say it's a guessing game, unless you get it first time, right? In which case, well done you. Letter Jam has this dramatic climax when you have to move your cards around and then flip them over in order to see whether you have got your word correct. And now let me put you out of your misery with the next diagram in the sequence. How on earth can that be explained? Well, I have actually never known anyone to get this right, but whenever it's one of those annoying puzzles that whenever it's revealed, it seems like you could have got it, or maybe not. And when it comes to numbers, that can create even more social anxiety than spelling and words, right? So I know that because I was a maths teacher for 15 years, and yet I own this game called Gambit 7, which is about quizzing people about statistics. And so you might think, how on earth is that fun? Well, Gambit 7 is based on a game called Wits and Wagers, but Gambit 7 is sort of the UK version of that, and it avoids the anxiety in a number of ways, right? First of all, some of the questions are obviously unknowable, right? Which makes everybody relax. Then the second thing is I would recommend playing the game in teams. As a maths teacher, there's a trick called think, pair, share. Basically, you allow people to think, but then you also get them to talk in pairs and then share. That's because it gives people an opportunity to ask somebody else and say, "Is this crazy what I'm thinking? Am I going to look foolish saying this?" But if you give people that opportunity to check it out first, then they can be more confident putting an answer forward. And when you put an answer forward in Gambit 7, your score is not based on your answer. What happens is you get to see everybody's answer and then you bet on the answers. So it's got a number of. This game is just genius, isn't it? How it's designed to ensure that everybody has a good time. And on top of that, in Gambit 7, there's a mechanism where your score can get catapulted ahead. You get multiplied by 7, or your score might be reduced to 0, which means the scoring is sort of irrelevant, which makes everybody relax. And yet it is an engaging quiz. If you get it wrong, you sort of have no responsibility for that. And yet, if you get it right, you can sort of say, well, I actually am a bit of an expert in this field. And now it's that time in the video when I'm going to have to make a decision about what I'm going to keep and what's got to go. And it's quite an easy decision this time because with puzzle games, they're kind of a one-time deal, right? So you play them and then let them go. I will note though that I'm actually not that keen on puzzle games because I'm a bit of an extrovert and they lack interaction for me. Now, Gambit 7, I forgot to mention, I actually used Gambit 7 in schools when I was working as a maths teacher. And this is the great thing about Gambit 7. It's a game that can work with 20 or 30 people at one time, which is really quite unique. And unfortunately for you, it's quite hard to get Gambit 7, so I'm not sure it's widely available. So for that reason, I'm hanging on to that one. In the case of Letter Jam, well, that is a game personally that I would play with my wife and her family, but I know that there are members of her family who are dyslexic, and they have told me that they really just don't enjoy word games. And so this is a case where I need to remember that word games are for people to play. And so for that reason, I'm going to let Letter Jam go. And now let's look at my progress towards keeping just 50% of my board game collection. Up until this point, I've managed to keep just 40%. And because this time I'm getting rid of these puzzle games, now I'm just keeping 37% of the games I've looked at so far. But this episode has been really quite an easy decision. Next time, I'm going to look at the games that I've bought more recently and talk about whether to keep them or let them go. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.